And we are live with another edition of the All Gas No Break Sports Show. I am one of your co-hosts, Nicholas Pavona, joined alongside as always by my co-host Andrew Johnson. First round of the NBA postseason has ended, and I will say there were a couple series that definitely were fun to watch over this past couple week or so, over a week I should say. And there were some series that we kind of expected to be ended pretty quickly. Those teams, as we expected, move on early. Maybe one big upset that we had happen in that first round. I think you and I both know exactly what series we're talking about. And now we have the second round postseason started. It already technically started last night, which we'll break down a little bit later on. We already have a 1-0 series lead for a team in the Eastern Conference. More games to kick off as well tonight in the NBA for us, our New York Knicks fans. We'll be watching game one of the second round of the NBA playoffs in just about 1 hour from tip-off. But Johnson, a very interesting first round to say the least.
Interesting in some regards and completely predictable in other aspects. To kind of recap our win-losses for the series, Nick called three series and the correct scores.
Somehow.
100% correct, which is crazy because on most sports books it's plus 300, plus 400. So you get a couple of those and, you're way, way above.
So close to a fourth one, too.
Yeah, for another three of them, Nick got yellow, meaning he called the series outright, but not the amount of games. And 2, he was dead wrong. For me, it was 2 green, 4 yellow, 2 red. And we can just go into that first series right now, and it was the Cleveland Cavaliers sweeping their way through the first round in 4 games, which you called correctly. You had in 4, and I had in 5.
Yeah, I mean, remember when we were making the predictions, the playing game between between Miami and Atlanta was still going on. The Hawks it looked like on their way to win that game, but the Heat came back to win. I mean, let's be real, Johnson. Is there much really to talk about this series that came down to it? The Heat had one of probably the worst postseason losses I've ever seen.
I think one of the worst postseason series of all time. This is top 5.
Yeah, the closest loss they had was 9 points in game number 2. They got pretty much outmatched in every single fashion. It's honestly, I think this is more appalling to the teams that didn't make it in the play-in, that this Miami Heat team that traded Jimmy Butler mid-season made it to the playoffs still, and they just got their asses kicked by the Cavaliers. They just didn't show up in any game of the series.
Yeah, which is kind of sad because that final game of the series, you would have thought that it was.
Tyler Hero flat out said going into that game that the Heat needed to find kind of some spark and wake up, and they were down near 60. I think at one point, I think they were down 50 at one point. I think what was the final score? They lost by 50 exactly.
They didn't lose by 50 exactly.
They had
a fake comeback towards the end there.
No, they lost by 50.
By exactly 50, man.
They lost by 55.
I mean, I turned off the game, and I know they cut it to 42 or 43. I know they cut it.
Yeah, they lost by 55. 138-83 was the final.
Yeah, I mean that's just inexcusable.
And the other one seed in the West had a similar, defeat in their series as well. That being in game 1, and I thought that was going to go down as maybe the worst loss in postseason history, and the Heat toppled that in that game 4 performance. So who knows where they go from here? They're no longer tied to Jimmy Butler in a sense, in some ways. So I guess now they can figure out what their future is going to hold. With right now Tyler Hero being the face of the franchise, but this is what I expected. I expected the Cavaliers, no matter who it was between either Atlanta or Cleveland in that spot, they were going to roll with these. This team has been. It's a different Cavaliers team this season. They're just more of a well-oiled machine. They have so much chemistry going. And Kenny Atkinson's done a great job with the helm his first year in Ohio. But let's move on to the next series, Johnson. Another series that we kind of both expected to pretty much be done easily. We both actually got this one correctly. That was the Boston Celtics beating the Orlando Magic in 5 games. They move on into the second round. And another series that, give Orlando some credit. They made some of these games competitive. Game 2 was a 9-point loss. Game 3, they actually were able to pull off the victory. Game 4, they were back. It was almost a back-and-forth game. The Celtics kind of pulled away in the second half to win that game against Orlando. And then they rolled past the Magic in Game 5 to move on to the second round. Like we said, Boston's the defending champion. We expected them to move on with ease in this series. Orlando was just not still there yet. they still need some more pieces if they want to be somewhat of a contender in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, no, Orlando made this an entertaining series, Velvel. It didn't listen, game one, I'm sorry, the final game was an absolute blowout. Game one was close up until the fourth quarter. Like, that was a competitive basketball game. Maybe not the fourth quarter, but in the first half, it was really competitive. And then this, third quarter got a little bit out of hand. And then by the time it was halfway through the fourth, it was over. Game number two, again, really competitive game. You really had no idea who was going to win until the third quarter hit. And then they pulled away a little bit, and then they kind of stayed at that distance the entire game. And then they got the close win in game three, and then another close game four. This probably coming down to the fourth quarter again, because again, they played good in the first half. They actually had a decent third quarter. It was very close going into the fourth for a critical game number four to tie the series and make it 2-2. And by the time game five came around, they were just they were exhausted.
Right.
Listen, they were a terrible third quarter team, the Magic, and it's gonna happen when you're a team this young. You don't have that many veterans. I mean, I guess the only veterans you have on this team, it's KCP and Corey Joseph. Now, no, obviously they've both played in the NBA for 10 plus years at this point, but this is a team where its leading scorers, Franz Wagner, Paolo Banchero, they've been kind of decimated by injuries. You would expect for these guys in a year or two to be a lot better than they are right now. Even Wendell Carter Jr. has been a surprise addition this year. He's been really contributing as well. So I think he'll have a spot on this team going forward. But I think if you really want to upgrade that center position, they'll really begin to have something special there.
Yeah, so I guess only time will tell with them. They're still, a young team at heart and can do something. The Eastern Conference is kind of in a weird spot where, there's a lot of good teams in the Eastern Conference. And I think before we go into the series that was probably the closest out of all of them, Johnson, this in the first round of the Eastern Conference, let's start off with the Pacers and the Bucks series. Because let's face facts, I witnessed probably the worst collapse or choke job, if you want to call it, in probably NBA history, in my opinion. The Bucks were up, and this is going into Game 5. There's a lot more stuff that happened in the series, obviously. Damian Lillard got injured with the Achilles tendon. That could be a career ender for him. Who knows what's going to happen next for him? Milwaukee was decimated by, injuries. We all know the narrative with Doc Rivers as well in terms of postseason. So it's not a lot of things were riding for them in this series. Game 5, things looked up for them. They were winning they got the game into overtime. They were winning by 7 points with 36 seconds left in the game in overtime. And they lost in that overtime period. A 3 for Andrew Nembhard. They then turned the ball over. Another an N1 for Halliburton. Then they turned the ball over again. And then Halliburton gets the bucket with 1.8 left. And they lose by 1 point in overtime. And that's how their season comes to an end.
Yeah, it's every single time I watch a team coached by Doc Rivers, I'm like, all right, it can't get any worse. It somehow gets worse, and
This
you feel bad because here's the thing: if Dame was healthy, I really think they would have won this series. It's really not crazy. It's really not crazy because this is a series that should have at least won six games with an injured Dame. And if you're saying he's 100% healthy, they probably win this series. There's no doubt in my mind they would have won this series. But this isn't the world we live in. It's a gentleman's sweep for the Pacers. And now they're on to Cleveland, and they're looking like they're hitting on all cylinders at the right time of year once again.
Yeah,
and if you're Milwaukee, your future's done. They might have to retire after this, and I really feel bad for him because and Giannis has already said he wants to be on a contender, and if Dame is going to have career ender and they have no draft capital, you better hope you trade it to some team like, let's say, the Rockets, where you can get multiple first-round picks.
Well, funny enough, I think the Rockets right now have their future first-round picks, if I'm not mistaken.
That's what I'm saying. So you better hope you can
get those picks back.
Yeah, if you can get those picks back for Giannis, and you didn't really have to mortgage your future. You got your championship, and now you can have your picks, so you can have your cake and eat it too.
Right.
Wouldn't be a bad idea.
And I think we'll talk about the Rockets more in a little bit. Their series came to an end last night against Golden State. The final series in the Eastern Conference we talk about, it was probably the most competitive series in the Eastern Conference by far, not even a question asked. That was the Knicks and Pistons series. And I kind of expected this. We as Knicks fans know that they really don't like to make things easy when it comes to postseason time, and they did not make anything easy this postseason series against the Pistons. Game one, they were losing in the fourth quarter. A lot of things were going wrong for them. They brought in Campaign, and Campaign pretty much provided a
He
spark
won a
for
game,
one of. Yeah, I mean, I forget what was the run, 20-0. That
21 to
run,
0.
21-0 at
Just
the end of
like
the
the
game.
Undertaker, 21-0 streak.
Yeah, I mean, probably one of the more unreal runs you'll ever see in NBA postseason history for the Knicks to do that late in the game as well. And they steal game one from Detroit and win by 11. Game two, the Pistons steal the game in the Garden, so they tie the series up, going back into Detroit. The Knicks hold on in game number three. That game had a lot of back and forth action as well. That even some controversy towards the end where Brunson hits the rim on a free throw and they piss the clock operator started the clock early, so the Pistons get a free possession. That still annoys me, even the series is over. The fact that they got a possession because that the Knicks got, what's the word I'm looking for? Like
They got shorted.
screwed. They got shorted, I guess. Yeah, and they gave Detroit an extra possession because their clock operator screwed something up. That could have easily cost the Knicks a series, or if that happens. They didn't lose that game. They were able to hold on by 2. Game 4, probably the most controversial game of the entire series by far. There was that foul play at the quote unquote foul play towards the end with Tim Hardaway Jr. He takes the shot and he got the defender to lean in and try to force a foul. No call in the play. The referee said afterwards that the foul should have been called. The Knicks take that game by 1 point, have a 3-1 lead in the series, had a chance to win the series at the Garden in game 5. They were not able to get it done in game number 5. It was a mixture of not consistent shooting in that game. Mitchell Robinson was by far the best player on the Knicks side of things for them for offense and defense, in my opinion. Brunson made some good shots in the fourth, but it still was not enough. Brunson and Hart eventually get hurt at one point in the game. They'd missed the last 2 minutes of the game because they got taken out, and there was no stoppage of play, so they weren't able to re-enter the game until like 30 seconds left, and by then, the Knicks were already out, without a reach and trying to win that game. And then game 6 was a thriller. The Knicks jumped out to an early. It kind of reminded me, Johnson, of what happened last year with Philadelphia. I thought this was the exact same game. Knicks jumped out to an early double-digit lead. The Pistons fought their way back, actually took the lead before halftime. Malik Beasley had an absurd first half in shooting three-pointers. The Knicks fought their way back in the second half. It was back and forth in the fourth quarter. The Pistons went on an insane run like the Knicks did in game 1. It looked like Detroit was about to win this game, and then the Knicks got some big shots towards the end, including the game-winning three-pointer from Jalen Brunson with about 7 seconds left, 6 seconds left, whatever it was. They hold on to win 116-113 in game number 6, and they move on into the second round of the postseason, which they'll take on the Boston Celtics.
And I think we could talk about the Western Conference now. Let's talk about that Oklahoma City Memphis series.
And, like I mentioned, I mean, game 1 was a blowout. The rest of the series was weird because game 3, Memphis had a shot.
Ja goes down.
And then Ja got injured, and OKC pulled off a 20-plus point comeback to win that game. And once that ended, then you knew that the Grizzlies were screwed. To their credit, they fought in game number 4, but they just couldn't get the job done. They didn't have enough, star power and
no
ammunition to win.
No Ja, no head coach, no victories. You were able to get playoff tickets for under $20 in Memphis. Yeah. Really embarrassing for the franchise and the sport in general. That this is a playoff team, and there's absolutely no traction. You win 48 games. It's one of the strongest Western Conferences in 10 years. And this is the reaction you get from your city and your fan base.
They were the number 2 seed, I think,
at one point,
going like late into the season. And then things just kind of unraveled. Ja apparently getting into confrontations with Taylor Jenkins. Jenkins get fired. And yeah, I mean, then Ja gets hurt, and that's the season. And you can even see it on the players' expression during the games. Like, there's just no, cohesiveness with the team itself. So they're in for a long offseason, I can tell you that. I don't know who they hire a head coach going into next season. The next series I want to go to, I probably want to say the last two game sevens. I think those are worthy to talk about. Probably have to talk about the Lakers and the Timberwolves and what happened with the Lakers in this series. I and you both thought the Lakers probably were going to win this just because, everything was starting to turn for them as of late. Definitely a tough first round matchup considering the Timberwolves' size compared to the Lakers' size in this series. And we saw out of the gate the Timberwolves had an insane game one in terms of shooting. They shot the lights out of at the court and what was it called now? Crypto Arena in it's Staples.
Crypto.com arena. Don't forget the
Crypto.com arena.
.com, of
Excuse me,
course.
excuse me. It's still Staples Center in my heart. It's still the Staples Center. But yeah, the Timberwolves had a great game one, jumped out to 1-0 lead in the series. The Lakers then fought back in game number two, tied the series heading into Minnesota. And then it just seemed like as if the Lakers, again, just had nothing really going for them. They lose by 12 in game three. They had a shot to win in game four. They were winning in the late stages of that game. And again, they just big shots for the Timberwolves. Edwards, McDaniels, Randall even had some big shots as well. And the Lakers jumped down to a 3-1 series deficit. Game five, they started off poorly in that game. The Timberwolves jumped out to an early double-digit lead. The Lakers tried to fight back and make this a game. They did make it a game at the end of it, kind of, but the Timberwolves pretty much controlled the game from start to finish. And it was because of Rudy Gobert in game number five. He had a big double-double 2020 game in that one for him. And the Timberwolves move on to the second round of the postseason as the number 6 seed in the Western Conference.
Anthony Edwards is shaping up to have a legendary NBA career. He's already sent home multiple Hall of Famers in the playoffs. He just needs to make it to the big one. He has a chance to even add to that legacy by sending home Steph Curry, which we'll get into our next series.
And they're calling him the Legend Killer now. He's taking Randy Orton's moniker from we know from our wrestling days. I'm just saying. It's possible. Durant, LeBron, and now potentially Curry. I guess we'll go into that series next. Let's talk about the Rockets and the Warriors. I had mentioned that series just ended last night, and this was a shaky one for Golden State towards the end. They jumped out to an early 3-1 lead. They took game one by 10. Game two, the Rockets bounced back with a 15-point win at Oracle. So they tied the series heading back into Houston. Then the Warriors started to pick things up. They won by 11 in game three. They won by 3 in game four. They jumped out to a 3-1 lead. But if you're a Warriors fan, you know a 3-1 lead is certainly not a safe lead as compared to what happened in the NBA Finals almost a decade ago. Game five, nothing really went right for Golden State. Curry got injured eventually in this series as well. I think it was in that game five, if I'm not mistaken. It kind of hurt him going into game six because he didn't really look like the Steph Curry we're known and accustomed to in terms of shot making. And you saw in game six, the Rockets used their advantage in size with Steven Adams and Alperen Sengun. They win game 6 by 8, and they forced a game 7 that happened last night in Houston. Unfortunately for the Rockets, a bad start for this game hurt them at the end. Buddy Hield with 22 first half points. The Rockets made a run in the third quarter, and the Warriors just got off to a nice start in the fourth, and Curry started to make some shots finally. Buddy Hield then, after having a slow start to the second half, finally made some shots as well in the fourth quarter. And Golden State avoids a 3-1 collapse, and they now move on into the second round. And as you mentioned, they'll take on Anthony Edwards and the Timberwolves.
Yeah, I was expecting this to be 7-game series, but I was expecting the Rockets to be the team that come out on top. And for the first half of that game, in game number 7, it looks like the Rockets could do it. Steph Curry was doing absolutely nothing, but Buddy Hield was an absolute flamethrower. 6 of 7 from downtown in the first half, and he was really the reason why they won this game. Steph Curry really wasn't scoring until the late third and then into the fourth quarter because without Buddy Hield, they don't win this game. It's not even close if Buddy Hield doesn't hit those shots.
It's crazy to think that's a sentence, but that is the absolute truth.
Listen, Buddy Hield was one of the top prospects not a decade ago, but probably about 7 years ago. Was he 2017, Buddy Hield? He was 2017.
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, he was one of the top prospects in the draft. He was drafted top 10 overall.
2016 draft.
Okay, so 9 years ago. So
yeah, almost a decade.
We're getting old now. But yeah, Buddy Hield was considered to be one of the top prospects at the time. He did lie on it with his age a little bit, and that's why he got drafted higher because he was known as a sniper in college, and He
I
lived up to the
forgot
name
he
today.
was. I forgot he was in the DeMarcus Cousins package for
He
from
was.
Sacramento to New Orleans,
Yeah, no, he was. Listen,
and he
he
was in
was
the
a he was.
Demontis Sabonis trade also.
Yeah, listen, he was a hot commodity, and he's been traded to a couple different teams now, but he's still a proven 3-and-D player, and that's invaluable in the modern NBA.
I mean, you and I remember what happened last year in Game 6 against the Sixers. He started to make some crazy shots, and it was kind of reminding me of what Malik Beasley was doing in Game 6. I was like, oh my god, here we go again. This is Buddy Hield from last year, and he, both guys eventually cooled off. And for us as Knicks fans, thankfully that was the case. But yeah, no, Buddy Hield had an insane Game 7. A big reason why Golden State was able to win, and now they get the matchup with the Timberwolves, a rare 6-7 matchup in the second round of the NBA playoffs. And as we know, Johnson, no 7th seed has won an NBA championship. So the
Yeah,
Warriors are
and
trying to see if they can pull off some
and
history.
and listen, this is the perfect team for him to be on because for his career, he's averaging 7.5 attempts a game, and he makes 40% of them for his career. So this is
Right.
a guy that averages 15.5 on 40% shooting, and he can guard the 1 and 2. So he's not really he can guard the 3, but he's a little bit shorter, so it's a little bit of a stretch, kind of like a Josh Hart kind of matchup. He's not really known for his tenacious defense, but hey, he's in the perfect situation right there in Golden State.
Right. And then let's go to the final series in the first round, the Western Conference, that being Denver and the Clippers. You and I both expected the series to go 7. We both had different winners in this side of things. And there was one crucial play in this series that decided how the series was going to come down to an end, and that happened in Game 4. We'll get to that in just a moment. Game 1, Denver wins in overtime by 2 points. Russell Westbrook was the big story of that game. He fueled that comeback win for Denver and helped them win in overtime to get the job done. Game 2 was about Kawhi Leonard, a 39-point performance. I know you're a big fan of his. It was so good to see him finally, playing in the playoffs after missing out most of last season. And he gets a big game number 2, gives the Clippers into go back to LA, tied series, I should say, at 1 apiece. They dominate game 3 and blow them out by near 34 points. So they go into game 4, they're up 2-1. They were down in the fourth quarter. They rallied to make a great comeback. They eventually tie the game late, and then probably the craziest buzzer beater I might have ever seen. We had the Derek White one not too long ago, and that was crazy itself. But the way this one happened is insane as well. It was Jokic shoots the ball with under 2 seconds left, gets the shot off. He airballs it because he shoots it over the rim. But Aaron Gordon on the other side of the rim gets the ball and throws it into the hoop with just what was it, .1 left on the clock or something,
As the
and
time's expiring.
just as time has expired, basically. And they got the buzzer beater, and Denver wins the game by 2 points. And considering the fact that if that series goes, if that game goes to overtime, who knows exactly what happens the rest of the way. But Denver steals that game, holds on to win by 2, and they tie the series. And then game 5, they pretty much rout them in game 5. They win by 16 to take a 3-2 series lead. The Clippers did respond in game number 6 with a crucial 6-point win to force a game 7. But unfortunately for the Clippers 2 nights ago, Johnson, game number 7 just did not go their way. It was back and forth in the first quarter. The Clippers led in the first. The second and third quarter were the difference makers of this entire game. The Clippers got outscored by 16 the second, 16 the third. They lose by 19, and Denver's moving on to the second round.
I feel really bad for Kawhi Leonard right now. James Harden has now lost a game 7 on his 4th different team.
And he was not.
Houston,
He
Oklahoma
was.
City, Philadelphia, Los Angeles.
And he was nowhere near anything in game 7 either. He had a rough game 7.
And, as someone
7
who's a
points on
fan
2
of
of 8
James
shooting.
Harden, and I really want him to get a championship, I could say he's kind of squandered a lot of things with his talent here because he had a GM in Daryl Morey who believed in him so much he would have done anything for him. He brought in Dwight Howard when he was in Houston, got rid of him when he didn't want him. He brought in Westbrook in Houston, got rid of him when he didn't want him. Same thing with Chris Paul there. And then we finally said, you know what, I'm done with Houston. I'm going to Brooklyn. So he goes to Brooklyn with Kevin Durant, Kyrie. That doesn't work. Okay, I want out. He goes back to Philadelphia with Daryl Morey, who again tries to do everything he wants. He's with a guy that won the MVP in Joel Embiid. Says, okay, can't do this. Then he goes to the Clippers, and now here he is again. And after a couple of years of him not making an All Star game, he's made one All Star game in the last 5 years now. And he finally, he's going to turn his career around. He has a good year with the Clippers. There's a lot of injuries. They overperformed. They're not even supposed to be in the playoffs, and here they are with a chance to make the second round. And in Game 7, scores 2 baskets. I think 9 points.
Yep. 7
points. 7 points. Gave him too much credit by about 22% there.
No.
I don't know where you go. If you're James Harden, clearly during his prime, he was one of the most unstoppable players of all time. Would average 35, 36 points a game, with 7 assists and 5 rebounds. MVP candidate every single year. I think he should have won at least 2 MVPs. I think he won an MVP, but I think there are 4 or 5 years you can look at and say he should have been MVP this year. It's not really that much of a hot take. And this is all with him doing, taking his off days, going to Vegas on his off days, and changing the team schedule so they could stay over at night when he doesn't want to stay over. Going out constantly in Houston, and now he's towards the end of his career. He's gonna be 36 years old next year, and you don't know how many more years of basketball you have because, again, like Dame, you can't take it for granted because a freak injury will just end your career could end your career at a moment. Now he's entering, he's gonna enter one of those conversations now, like he's great. But a championship would have pushed him to top 20. Now it's going to keep him probably out of the top 30 of all time.
Right.
This was really, I think, his last decent chance of winning it as what the kids call it as a bus driver and not a passenger. And if he does win one in the next 2 or 3 years, it's not going to be as an all-star. It's not going to be as a lead guard. Maybe he'll start, but he's not going to be the guy in that team.
Right. So we'll have to see. I mean, is he a free agent coming up soon?
I don't believe he is. No.
I thought for some reason he was, but maybe I'm wrong about that.
Give me a second here. I'll check for you.
Yeah, I'm checking it right now. He did sign a 2-year deal, so he should be a free agent.
If he hasn't opt out, I don't know if he hasn't. He's a player option
next year.
Okay, so was it I didn't know if there's a player option or not.
Yeah. Yeah, so who knows?
He can go anywhere he wants after the season.
Right.
He's got 2 months to decide. June 29th is the date he has to opt in.
Well, that leads us then, Johnson, to the second round. We have already, as I mentioned, started a second round matchup. That what happened last night with the Indiana Pacers going into Cleveland and shocking the Cavaliers and taking game 1, 121-112. Now, we're going to be in the Mushing Hour part of our show where we're going to be picking to see who wins in our second round matchups. The Pacers, we'll recap this game before we make our pick for the series. Great game for, Indiana. Halliburton with 22, Nembhard with 23. All 5 stars had double figures. They jumped out to an 11-point lead at the end of the first quarter. Cleveland fought their way back to make this somewhat of a game, but it was a nice fourth quarter from Indiana, and that was enough for them to win this game. The Cavs did not have Darius Garland in this game due to an injury on his toe, so that maybe could have played a big reason why Cleveland lost. We'll have to see if that does play a factor in the rest of the series. But despite that happening, Johnson, with Indiana up 1-0, do you still have who do you have winning the series? Do you have the Pacers winning it now?
So I had Cleveland in 6 as my original prediction. I'm not going to change that, so I'm going to stick with Cleveland in 6. I think it goes 7 games now, officially, and I still have Cleveland winning. But at first I had Cleveland in 6, and since we didn't record before, I'm not going to change it. I've always kept it like this. So my original pick is Cleveland in 6. Going to keep it like that, but I think it's a 7-game series, and I still think Cleveland takes it.
I'm going Pacers in 6. I think I would have taken Pacers before the series too. And my only reasoning, there's really not much, good logic behind it originally going into it because as we mentioned, Cleveland had an insane season, 64 wins, best record in the Eastern Conference. The Pacers, to me, I feel like if you look on paper, I like their starting 5 a little bit more than Cleveland for some reason. I don't know why it is. Nembhard and Halliburton, 2 nice backcourt you got there. And Siakam does a great job. We all know what he's done in the playoffs as well in years past. Miles Turner, a very capable center, but I like the bench of Indiana a lot more than Cleveland. I think that's the only reason why I haven't been as in tune with the Cavaliers this season. Ty Jerome has been by far the Cavaliers' best player off the bench with DeAndre Hunter, but I don't know. It just feels like Indiana has a little bit more depth on their bench compared to Cleveland. And I feel like that's going to be the difference maker in this series. I think it comes down to bench depth. I just like again, it could be people could be saying, well, you're just picking them because they're up 1-0. Sure, you might think that's the case, but I just think Indiana we're due to have some upsets in this playoff. We've already had maybe one considering or the Lakers lost. I think this will probably be the bigger upset of the entire postseason. I got Indiana winning this in 6 games.
And just announced that Kenny Atkinson just won Coach of the Year. So Coach of the Cavs winning Coach of the Year. Not a surprise there.
Not a surprise there, yeah.
And I think we have our second series now, the dreaded Boston versus New York Knicks series here.
Oh, God.
Listen, I know that there's only really one matchup all year where the Knicks were 100% healthy and the Celtics were 100% healthy, minus Al Horford. And that was the last game of the season. And Boston did end up winning that, but not of the margins of the other 3 games.
Wasn't Jaylen Brown still hurt, though?
He was a little hurt. He was, and listen, he played
25
minutes.
He didn't play the rest of the game, I remember.
He played 25 minutes. If he plays 30 for a night, he played 80% of his normal minutes. I don't care if he's, whatever. That was the closest game we had because the other games we had multiple players out. That's just how it was. We had multiple players out the entire time. And, that would have been a game where the Knicks won and they lost because they a last-second three-pointer. Whatever. It is what it is. They got hot towards the end. But with all that being said, I'm still going Boston in 5 year. New York gets one, but that's it.
I want to see them make this a series. I don't want to be like a Debbie Downer and be like, well, here we go. My problem is they had such a tough series with Detroit. Like every single game against
them, so I think it helped them.
Right, that could help them definitely. Boston kind of cruised through their first round matchup with Orlando. The Knicks had to pretty much fight every single game. Every single game of that Detroit series was pretty much under 10 points. So it was a single digit, win pretty much every game. The Knicks, as I mentioned, they had another solid year, but when they faced the top teams in the Eastern Conference, that being Boston and Cleveland, they just struggled mightily against them. And let's face facts, they've struggled against Boston the last 2 years, maybe even longer than that. This obviously being the first time these teams have played each other in the playoffs since 2013. The Knicks won that series. A lot different, what happened that time around. The Knicks were the second best team in the Eastern Conference. Boston was at the last legs of their big three with Rondo and Pierce and Garnett and Ray Allen, Big Four, whatever you want to call it. Drew Holiday sounds like he's going to play in Game 1 tonight, so we'll see how that factors because we know how good of a defensive point guard he is, and I'm sure he'll be on Brunson for the majority of the series as well. I think for the Knicks to have a shot, the only way they're going to be able to do something is they need Karl-Anthony Towns to be a lot consistent in this series because he's going to be, competing with Porzingis for a lot of possessions. We know Porzingis is another capable three-point shooter. The problem for the Knicks, I think, is that's going to hurt them is it's kind of what I just talked about the last series. It's going to come down to the bench depth. Boston has so much depth on their bench. The Knicks not as much. And I think the Knicks will fight in this series. I think they'll make it something. But I'm going to go with Boston as well. I had them to win the NBA championship when we made our original picks. I will go with the Boston Celtics. I'm going to go in 6 games. I hate it, but I think they get it done in the Garden Court, which is going to really, really suck.
I will not be there. It'll be my brother's wedding, so I will say I have tickets to that game. It will save me the pain and suffering. Speaking of pain and suffering, let's talk about Oklahoma City and Denver, which I think will be the best game of this entire second round, or best series of this entire second round. Excuse me.
Okay.
You have a lot of veterans that won a championship in Denver, led by Nikola Jokic. They have competent role players in Jamal Murray, Aaron Gordon, and Michael Porter Jr. You have I guess not really a rookie on that team, but in Christian Brown, not really a rookie, but not really a established vet yet, who is looking to make a name for himself. And you have the young guns of Oklahoma City, pretty green in the playoffs, and they won 55 games by 10 plus points. I have OKC in 7, but I have this as being another really entertaining series.
Well, I think the fascinating storyline of the series for me is Russell Westbrook gets to play against his former team, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of sentimental value for Westbrook. Going back to OKC and facing a former team that's right now the best team in the entire NBA. 68 wins. I mean, nothing to brag about. I mean, that's just an insane season that the Thunder have. You look at their roster, they're from top to bottom. I mean, there's really no bad thing about this team. The only issue they might have this entire series is probably just trying to figure out how to guard Jokic, which is what every team pretty much says at this point when you're facing the Denver Nuggets. I think this will be a close series as well. I think I'm gonna go with. I don't know if I want to go with six again because I've done that already back to back. I think OKC wins also. You know what? I'm gonna go OKC in five. I talked myself out of a long series. I don't know if Denver's gonna be able to. Now that I'm thinking about it, you know, Denver is gonna compete, but I feel like towards the end of these games, if Jamal Murray is not making the last second shot, then we know Jokic can certainly make them too. I just think the Thunder have too much, more
I love how the argument for
firepower.
years for
I'm
not to
arguing
cut
with
you off.
myself.
Yeah, I'm not to cut you off. But I love how the argument for years was, "Oh, Jokic isn't a closer; he sucks," and now like it kind of
Yeah,
disappeared over the last couple of years because now people realize, "Oh my God, he's like one of the most clutch players in the NBA." I
yeah,
felt that was so stupid for a couple of
it
years. Like,
was.
oh, he's not clutch. He's not a closer, whatever. And now, runner up to clutch player of the year and winning a championship. But
I mean,
I
listen,
digress.
this is a battle of the top two, players in the MVP voting. Gilgis Alexander is going to win it, but at least it shows you how these two guys have been all season and why these are two of the more well respected players in the NBA. And the series will prove to one of them why they should be the MVP, regardless of what happens. I just think OKC has too much compared to what Denver has in terms of roster depth. So I'll go with OKC in five. And then what's our last series?
We're gonna have Minnesota versus Golden State, the coveted 6-7 matchup, and
Yeah,
it's crazy that a play-in team it may be going to the NBA, the Western Conference Finals, but a guaranteed 6 or 7 seed going to the Western Conference Finals. I have Minnesota in 7. I think Anthony Edwards adds another notch to his playoff resume, and I want to give a shout out here to Julius Randle, who is playing his first playoff uh, I don't know if it's serious, but his first playoffs in general, 100% healthy. And we had, as the original Julius Randle truther, I always had the deal of, he's injured. This is why he's playing so bad. And it was, oh, he's not injured. He just sucks. And then, he got ankle surgery. And then he got, shoulder surgery. And, all this stuff kept him out. And he had a really good series against the Lakers, against a tough team. I think he averaged about 50% from the field. And I think he averaged, like 6 rebounds, 5 assists, and I think like 22 or 23 points a game. So he had a fantastic series, great shooting splits, and I think him getting over Golden State will just kind of legitimize the latter half of his career because he's a late bloomer player. I'm really happy for what he did for the Knicks. Multiple time All Star, most improved player, and hopefully next year he gets more respect after he has a couple of good playoff series under his belt. So I'm rooting for the Timberwolves, and again I have him here in 7 games. I think, ironically, Golden State's a little bit too young to go to the Western Conference Finals. They have veterans and obviously Steph Curry and Draymond Green, but Draymond's besides getting flagrant fouls and hard rebounds, isn't going to be doing much for you unless you have got a lot of young talent and Poldensky and you have Moses Moody and you have Jonathan Kuminga, or
if
Kuminga, I should say.
Kaminga
Excuse me.
plays,
Yeah, of course.
I haven't played him once.
I know it's a little strange, but they have a lot of young talent on that team from top to bottom, and I think they're going to. This is kind of like a transition period where they had a soft rebuild, and now when you take a look at this roster, you could see them being competitive for the post Steph Curry years, but I don't think they're winning a championship or going to another conference finals. So anything can really happen. But I have Minnesota in 7 here.
Uh, I look at it like this. The Warriors are going to have to play to their strengths, which is they're going to have to shoot the lights out to avoid losing the series, which is what we know. Because if you look at how they were against the Rockets before they won Game 7, they were struggling to get rebounds, and they were getting beat up by Adams and Sengun. And now you're facing Rudy Gobert, who just had a great Game 5 performance against the Lakers. We know how capable of a good rebounder he is and defender as well, as long as he stays inside the post, which don't go out to the three-point line, Rudy, for the love of God. They're going to try. The only way the Warriors are going to be able to really expose the Timberwolves in the series is if they do that exactly. Get Gobert outside of the paint, force him to be guarding one of these guards, and then, they just get some crazy shots over him, and that gets the job done. Looking at this series as a whole, I would have maybe originally said Golden State. You get Jimmy Butler is a nice addition as well. Funny enough, he goes back to Minnesota. I forgot about that storyline for this, but he technically does go back to play a former team of his in this postseason. These two teams were only separated by one game in the entire record of scheme of things, so might be a lot closer than maybe people expect in this series. I think Minnesota is gonna. I have a feeling Minnesota is gonna expose them in this series. I got the Timberwolves in 5 games. I just don't know if Golden State's going to be able to.
Yeah, I don't know if I don't know if it builds for this year because, like I said, this is a younger playoff team. Minnesota has some vets. They got Randall, they got Dante DiVincenzo, Rudy Gobert, Naz Reid, Jay McDaniels, they got Nickeil Alexander, Nickeil Alexander Walker. Yeah. There's plenty of guys on this that can get a bucket in prime time in crunch time, which you trust. Like Naz Reid did it multiple times.
Right.
Randall's done it. Edwards has done it. Dante DiVincenzo lit it up for New York last year. And I'd even mention Mike Conley, the stalwart point guard. So they have a lot of guys here that are used to the big moment, and they don't have to score 25 points a game for this team to be successful.
Yeah, it's not like you need...
Some of their parts are greater than the whole here.
It's not like you need Anthony Edwards to go and get you like a 40-point game every single night. Like, you have other weapons on your arsenal.
You have. I think you have... Besides Edwards, I think you legitimately have 4 or 5 guys that can get you 20 points. Not on a regular basis. I think Randall can get you 20. Naz Reid, Jay McDaniels can get you 20. And I think Mike Conley, maybe on an off night, can get you 20. And I think Dante DiVincenzo could line it up for 20 points still.
You can make the case that Gobert, compared to the size on Golden State, he could probably get you a 20-point game as well at some point in the series.
He can. I mean, I would not rely on Rudy Gobert to score,
Absolutely
but it's
not.
happened.
No, I'm just basing it off the size of what Golden State has for you. Because, like you mentioned, you're basing it off. You're basically, you're hoping that Draymond is going to get you those rebounds somewhat. I would guess. Kevon Looney, yeah. I mean, like, it's not going to be. It's not going to work because we just saw what happened with the Lakers. Like, they didn't have the guy that
they're missing AD.
Right, they don't have the guy to size up with Gobert. As I meant, the only way you win this if you're Golden State is you have to do what teams have done in the past against the Timberwolves and even the Jazz for going back even further. You have to get him outside of the paint. You have to force someone like Randall to be the guy down low to get the rebound, and you can win those rebound battles. You absolutely can still have a chance to win that. You have a way better shot of winning the rebound there. But if Gobert is staying inside the post and inside the paint, it's going to be tough for you to get any type of rebounds. The Warriors have to do what they've known for over a plus decade. They have to shoot the lights out for them to have a shot in the series. And I just don't know how consistent it's really going to be, considering that the last series against Houston, it wasn't as consistent. The only reason I feel, in my opinion, that they won that series is because Houston just had a bunch of inconsistent shooting as well, and they're just a younger team. They just weren't realistically ready for that postseason spot just yet. They will be eventually, but they weren't ready for it yet, and Golden State kind of capitalized on it. You saw Villy last night. He was legit telling the players on the court, "You got to wake up," because they weren't ready for it. So I have Minnesota in 5. That's my abbreviated take. I got the Timberwolves in 5 games, and they'll take on OKC in the Western Conference Finals. Johnson, what about our picks for the East and West winner? Do we have the same picks as from last time?
Yeah, I have Cleveland OKC with OKC winning the whole thing still.
I still have Boston and OKC with Boston still winning the whole thing as well.
All right, so I think we're both still agreeing. And other than that, Nick, I think we're wrapped up here. Do you have anything to add for our viewers or our listeners here? Excuse me, for the end of the show.
Same thing as usual. Once these series comes to an end, you and I will be back here on the show and recapping the second round and previewing the conference semifinals for the NBA playoffs. And for you and I, we got 5 minutes till tip off between the Knicks and Celtics. So hopefully you and I are in a better mood before this night comes to an end. So go Knicks.
Yeah, and I just want to shout out one thing. It's a local card show happening in our hometown of Staten Island over the next I think 6 or 7 months. It's going to be like a once every 6 weeks kind of thing. The next one is going to be Sunday, June 1st. And again, I know this is far in advance, but just trying to want to get that out there. Sunday, June 1st at St. Anne's Gym on 125 Cromwell Avenue, Staten Island, New York, 10304. 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. Really good, successful show, and I'm going to be setting up there alongside Nick and everyone else for the next 6 months. And it's very important to have a local Staten Island show because not like I have anything, personal beef with New Jersey. I'm just sick of driving to New Jersey for card shows. So
hey, those tolls.
Just want to shout that
killer.
out.
Those tolls are a killer.
So it's something that we desperately need here in the island, and the creators of this show, we're really fortunate that they're putting this on. So we'll plug this a few more times over next month, but just given a month-long head start on this announcement.
Couldn't have said any better myself. I'm looking forward to that show next month here on the island. But that's going to do it for this week's edition of the All Gas No Break Sports Show. The first round of the NBA postseason has come to an end, and now we move on into the second round of the postseason. We have the Cavaliers and the Pacers. Pacers up 1-0 in that series. The Boston Celtics and the Knicks will take place tonight, Game 1. Oklahoma City and Denver will take place as well, Game 1 tonight. Tomorrow, Game 1 between the Timberwolves and the Warriors kicks off to kick off this second round of the NBA postseason. Who will move on into their respective conference conference finals. We'll have to find out and tune in next time here on the show who does move on into the conference finals. This has been Nicholas Pavona, joined alongside by my co-host Andrew Johnson for the All Gas No Break Sports Show. Have a great rest of your week, and for all of our Knicks fans, go Knicks!